Hey, Randy Joe here, and this is 1000 Reviews, the series where I plan on reviewing every single album from the 1000 Albums Listened to Before You Die book. And today we're looking at Elis Regina's 1978 album, Vento De Maio. Vento De Maio was released underneath the EMI Hemisphere label, produced by Uncredited with art direction from Bill Smith, nationality Brazil, and a running time of 48 minutes and 15 seconds. Now, Vento De Maio is my first welcoming of Elis Regina's music, and I have to say that this thing through and through is an absolutely incredible experience, in my opinion, to show off the diverse range of the singer. And now, personally, I don't speak the language that she speaks in the song, so I can't really delve too much into the lyrics or how I feel about what she's singing, but I can say that her voice throughout this entire thing is incredibly strong and just gorgeous through and through. It's impressive with just how much I have fallen in love with her sound and style on this entire album and have really hooked into her musical ability. Her voice is just truly capturing on its own, and the way she structures a lot of these songs and the way a lot of the songs play out feels very unique and strong and cohesive. She mixes in a perfect blend of jazz and pop music, making this just as catchy as it is artistically important and just overall enveloping. For example, the opening track has just this great sense of atmosphere, especially with how much it changes throughout its runtime. The second half of this track has this great backup singing as well that continues to push the envelope of this track and make it more infectious and ends it on an infectious sort of note. While the second track, side Dessa, is much more poppy and upbeat with its approach, making it quite a shift from the first one. And what I like about Side Dessa is it has this very strange, comforting atmosphere that feels very nostalgic for a time that I personally am not from. Yet still hearing this, I feel like I am coming from a different location altogether in a different time period, and it really transports me to a very distinct sort of time zone. The way it's able to just draw me in and really put me somewhere else is what makes this track so charming and also just incredibly enjoyable with how infectiously poppy it is. There's also the fourth track, which slows things down dramatically, but its jazzier approach and its much more soulful and atmospheric approach make this feel as if you are in some sort of jazz club and really just enveloped into the atmosphere here. Her voice is highlighted greatly by the backup instrumental being quite soft and really putting her voice on full display, and it really whisks you away to this almost different dimension. And her voice is only further pushed and shown off throughout much of this album, but especially on the track O Que Foi Filho de Vera, which starts things off slower and explodes in the second half of the track with this very monumental instrumental, which is so bombastic and explosive, as well as her voice really belting out much louder than pretty much anywhere else on this album, showing her vocal range much greater than anywhere else on this album as well, as she really pushes its boundaries. She really takes away from the soft approach that she typically does and gets to a much more vocally expansive approach. And the guitar work as well on this track is noteworthy for just how frantic and intensive it is, really adding to the overall chaotic atmosphere that is the second half of this track. But if I'm going to talk about the great tracks, the true standout ones here, the ones that really stood out the most to me and feel the most noteworthy, then I have to talk about the track Rebento, which is by far my most favorite track on here and the one I find myself going back to the most when I'm not listening to the entirety of the album, as Rebento is purely focused on just her performance ability, her vocals, and the very soft piano instrumental. There's almost no instrumental other than the soft piano that is just greatly complemented by just her performance ability. In this track, not only do you hear her voice at its most vulnerable, but you also hear it almost croaking at parts. In the second half of the track especially, she's pushing it to the point where it feels as if it's about to break, and yet she's still maintaining her note. I also enjoy the very soft hushes of breaths that you can hear throughout this track, as if she is close to the mic and you can just feel her in the mic. It is just so beautiful how warm and well produced this track is, and how much it just really carries itself through her performance ability alone. Vocally, she's fantastic, but I think the very subtleties of this track, like her hushed voice or the croaking of her voice, really adds so much more to the track. You hear her back away and breathe in before going back into the vocal delivery about the first minute or so, and it just gives me goosebumps when you hear it. And I think something like this really shows that her voice could command an entire track and take hold of an entire track just by her performance ability alone, which feels incredibly unique. And the track following this one, O Trem Azul, only continues to push this approach of focusing on her performance ability and her vocals, but with a much wider instrumental to back it up. Personally, I don't like this as much as I do like the piano work on the previous track more for the backup instrumental, but I do think this much more expansive instrumental is still a nice addition if that is something that you're looking for. As far as weak tracks on this album go, there is the song Outro Callas, as well as Nova Este Kilo, which feel just shorter and much less structured than the rest of this album. I think a lot of the songs on here work so well because of their very unique structures. They break off into different directions or they shift tones throughout their runtimes. But these two tracks are much shorter than anything else on the album for the most part and don't really feel like they breathe as much as the others. They don't live and expand upon themselves as much as the other tracks do. Structurally, these feel very one note and flat when compared to a lot of the other much superior tracks on this album. But luckily, they aren't too long to really bog this thing down. She is, in my opinion, at her best and in her element when she is just letting the song flow into all these different directions and letting it expand naturally. I would also say that the final track on this album as well feels significantly weaker than much of the album, as it again doesn't feel that unique or stand out-ish as much of the track list that we've heard so far. But even still, this entire album is pretty strong through and through and really shows off Elis Regina's palette and ability to command an audience in a way. Her production here and the structures of the songs and just the way she performs are really standout-ish and unique and worthy of a listen. And as far as Brazilian music goes, I think she is one of the best to represent it and definitely worthy of a listen if you want to expand into more regions than your own native country. With that all being said, the soft rating comes to an 8.5 out of 10, but I will bump up the hard rating to a 9 out of 10. It is a fantastic album. It is, in my opinion, a must listen. So with that, it also gets an E for essential. Great Brazilian artist and definitely a worthwhile listen. All right, let's see what the next album we listen to is in the 1001 Albums Before You Die book. Random number generator 1 to 1001. Generate 425, which will be the album. 425 being Brian Eno's Ambient 1, Music for Airports from 1978. Please give that a listen. I'll review that in about 1 week from now. I'll tell you right now that will be a very positive review. Very positive. Anyways, that pretty much does it for this video. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe if you want to follow along and listen to every album from the 1001 Albums Listened to Before You Die book. And as always, my name is Randy Joe, and I'm signing off.